folks, how's it going? David here. Thanks so much for joining for another fiddle tune lesson here on the YouTube channel, and I'm excited to be showing you this fun 3-part fiddle tune called Durang's Hornpipe. And I didn't know too much about the history of this tune before I looked it up for this lesson, and apparently this one dates all the way back to 1785, which means this tune's coming up on 250 years old, right? Which that kind of blows my mind. Partly because this tune is so old, there's a ton of different variants on this melody out there. You know, some people even just play this as a 2-part fiddle tune, but I've heard this 3-part version from some modern recordings that I really love, including Adam Steffy's One More for the Road record from 2009, great mandolin version, and even before that, Adam Hurt played an amazing version of this tune on clawhammer banjo with his record Insight from 2006, which was really inspiring to me listening to that version. I actually stole a few of Adam's licks for a performance of this tune for a Mandolin Mondays video that should be premiering sometime soon on the Mandolin Cafe. Maybe it already has by this point. And maybe you've already seen that video and that's why you're here wanting to learn this tune. So I won't hold you back. Why don't you grab your mandolin and we'll start off by learning the chords to this tune. So we're in the key of D for this tune, right? And the chords are pretty simple. We just have the 1, the 4, and the 5, which I'm sure you probably already know, but just to review, our open chord shapes would be D, G, and A. And for any bluegrass choppers out there, here are the same chords with your chop shapes. So let's put these chords together in order for our chord progression. And like I mentioned, this is a 3-part fiddle tune. We have A, B, and C for those different sections. They're each 8 measures long with repeats. And here in the A section, we kind of have the busiest chord motion of the whole tune. So let me just walk you through this progression once. Starting with that first measure of D, then we have a quick G back to D. Same thing again, followed by a measure of A, a measure of D, G, A, back to D. Those 8 measures repeat, and then we move on to the B section here, which is a little bit easier. So here's a full measure of D, full measure of G, back to D for a measure, A. Now this line is actually the same as the second line of the A section, so you've already played this. So we'll repeat those 8 measures for the second B and move on to the 3rd part, but you see in the 3rd section, this is exactly the same progression that we just played for the B, so you've already got this whole tune down. Just play through these 8 measures twice to finish the whole chord progression. By the way, if you want to, you can grab those PDF copies of the chord diagrams and the transcription that you see here over on my Patreon page at the link in the cards above. And if you do have it, why don't you take some time to get more familiar with this chord progression by strumming along with me as I play through this melody again and play along with the backing tracks that you can also get over here on Patreon too. And just listen to the melody, listen to the form, get used to the chords, and don't be afraid to slow things down here on YouTube. Just click on that gear options button here at the bottom of the video frame and slow down to whatever percentage feels most comfortable to you. All right, let's jam. Moving on to the melody now, and this is quite a fun melody to play. I'm excited to show it to you, and what we usually do here on the channel, I just dropped my pick. What we usually do on the channel here is break things down into 2-measure phrases, go bit by bit with this transcription, and I'll break things down, explain a few techniques to you along the way. So let's start off with this A section. And I will say that this melody moves pretty fast. There's a ton of 8th notes here, and we're gonna be using that alternate picking throughout this tune where your downstrokes line up with the beats in the measure and your upstrokes in between the beats. And if you're not familiar with that, I've got you covered. Check out this other video in the cards too. So here's our first 2-measure phrase. we have this leap from the 2nd fret on the E string all the way up to the 7th fret with your pinky. Just a little bit of a stretch there, but that's probably the best way to finger it. Then we just have a lot of D major arpeggio motion, right? Playing some G major chord tones, back to the D arpeggio. Try this phrase with me. Here's the next two measures. So it's kind of a meandering melody here. Take your time, break this down into smaller 4-note chunks if that helps. But when you're ready, let's see if we can try this together too. Moving on to the second line for our third phrase. So some similar scale pattern ideas centered around our D major chord here, right? The D and F sharp fit with your D major chord. There we're playing the F sharp, the A, and the D, so all that fits really well. So we get to the G chord on this next measure, starting on the B note, which again is a chord tone for your G major chord. Then we're walking up to the D, which is another chord tone for your G major, and we're just kind of playing neighbor tones and connecting notes between the B and the D for this whole measure. So put those two measures together now. And the last two measures, or what some people call the turnaround phrase of this section, goes like this. All right, so we're doing this A7 arpeggio at the beginning, and then the next beat we have a hammer-on triplet. If you haven't played one of these before, it's a really common thing in mandolin music. I love doing it. You just hammer on for the first two notes with a downstroke, then you catch the third note on your upstroke. That way you don't have to worry about adding in an extra pick stroke and changing your pick directions. So just be down, up, and then you can finish out that last measure with this D arpeggio, D pentatonic thing. And of course you can play these last two eighth notes here in the first ending to take you back to the beginning of the A section for the repeat. But let's first just see if we can stitch these four phrases together and play through this A section once together with that backing track and transcription on screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to the B section now, let's check out this first phrase. So first we got this quarter note pickup on the 5th fret of the A string. This is from the previous measure before the B section, and it leads into this open D chord hammer-on. We're playing the open D, open A, and open E before hammering on with the index finger on the 2nd fret. And right after that hammer-on, we're playing another open D string to fill this space before returning to the E string to finish this melody. So if you're worried about the pick directions here, it would be down for the hammer-on, down on the open D string, and then we're doing an upstroke on that 3rd fret for the E string. And you can just alternate from there, but another thing to watch out for here in the first measure is the C natural that we have in the melody, which is almost creating this D7 effect, which pulls us to the 4 chord in the key of D, which is G. And you get that resolution in the next measure. The next two measures are kind of similar to the beginning of the B section, but it's a little bit different with the hammer-on triplet and a different ending to watch out for. And we're gonna be using this particular hammer-on triplet quite a lot for this tune, so it's good practice. Here's that whole phrase together. All right, next line, we're doing something a little bit weird here. Check this out. So we have a quarter note here on the 5th fret of the D string, followed by a D7 chord. Similar idea, we're pulling towards the G chord that's coming up next, but here we're actually just playing the chord, followed by an open E string that's tied across the beat there, and trying to let the chord sustain while the open E string is ringing out too, so try not to mute any of the strings with your left hand. And the turnaround is exactly the same as the A section, so try this with me. All right, it's time to give this B section a spin once through, so when you're ready, let's give this a shot together. right, just one more part to go, and this one might be the easiest because there's a lot of internal repetition. In fact, each 2-measure phrase starts out almost exactly the same way. Here's the first one. We have this pickup where we're walking down to the open D string, and from there, we're just playing kind of an arpeggio, right? D, F sharp, A, and back down. And when we get to this G chord, there's a lot of familiar melodic material going on too. Check this out. Here's that whole phrase. Our next 2 measures starts out the same way, right? Only difference is over this A chord, right? We have another hammer-on triplet, but now we're doing it with our middle and ring finger on the D string on the 4th and 5th frets. A little bit harder since our ring finger is a little bit weaker, but same idea. And you've actually already played this melody over the G chord. It's from the exact same measure on the A section, so let's try this phrase together. And you guessed it, the turnaround stays the same too, so let's give this a whirl. The C part awaits, so let's try this section once through. Well, it has come time to jam out on all 3 parts of this amazing fiddle tune here. Let's see if we can play through both A's, both B's, and both C's. We'll have that backing track and transcription with us, and I'll be your jam partner here. And don't worry, if you've never played a 3-part tune in the jam before, if you've only done 2 parts, then take your time because it does take some extra endurance and some extra focus to get through those last 16 bars at the end. But when you're ready, let's give this a shot together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, it was great playing music with you here. I'm sure it sounded awesome. I really wish we could hear each other over the internet, but if you enjoyed playing along, be sure to leave a comment below, and if you learned something, a like and a subscribe goes a long way. Or if you want to support the channel even further and get access to all those learning resources for this video and for all the other videos here on the channel, then head over to Patreon at the link below. But speaking of other videos, there's going to be a follow-up video for this one. If you're looking for a next step on Durang's hornpipe, then check out this other lesson where I break down the entire solo that I played for that Mandolin Mondays video. We'll go phrase by phrase. I'll show you all my tricks and licks for this one, so hopefully you can have some ideas for this tune and other tunes in the key of D for that matter. So check it out if you're interested.